content is king, distribution is the queen. And VERB, our company that we just basically transformed into the first, premier and only TON treasury company, is now the only way for the global equity investor to get access to not only TON, but also effectively, indirectly to Telegram. Not only is TON harder to buy, not only is there not a race between us and other TON coin companies, we're the only one that has the partnership with Telegram, which is exclusive. So we welcome this. We think, again, while there is maybe right now no other one, we would love for you guys to do one in Asia. I think there's at least a $100 billion company here. And it might be 2 chapters, right? Chapter 1 is like maybe, from 1 billion to 10 billion. Right? And then I talk about chapter 2, which is from, 10 billion to 100 billion. Plan A is TON coin. Right? Plan B is also TON coin, and Plan C is TON coin.
This is Ton of Alpha, and this is your host, Mr. Z. And today, I'm joined by one of the most bullish voice on TON blockchain anywhere on this planet. And that is Mr. Manuel Stotz, the executive chairman of TON Strategy. So Manny has a wonderful journey all the way from Goldman Sachs to founding Kingsway Capital to Bitcoin to TON. And today, he's here to tell us why the US investor is so bullish on TON. Welcome, Manny. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Z. Thanks for having me. This is wonderful. Really appreciate the time.
Yep, great to see you here. So before getting into the topic, I would like to kind of pretty curious, like Manny, how did you get to here? Like, can you walk us through your journey all the way from Goldman Sachs to TON Strategy?
Sure. So I joined Goldman actually just before the financial crisis, and I only later learned, what it really was and what it was all about. And of course, the problems in the existing financial system were, I guess the genesis of Bitcoin in the end, or one of them. And, the key with Goldman Sachs is to get more out of the firm than they get out of you. I met my wife at Goldman, so I can claim success. And, I was always an entrepreneur. So basically, I, decided to start my own business coming out of Goldman, Kingsway Capital. And what Kingsway does, we're basically one of the world's leading investment firms when it comes to frontier emerging markets. So that means actually we don't even invest in, China. It's too developed, right? And
Yes.
the same is for, Russia or India and Brazil. We're big in Bangladesh and the Middle East and Africa and so forth. And we've always had, frankly, big trouble with the currency. And, when we then got into venture capital and fintech and then crypto, we realized basically that there's something like 3 billion people in the world, right? Which, 3 billion is bigger than India and China combined today.
Yes.
Who are basically underbanked or unbanked entirely. And they don't have the US dollar, right? They have the Zimbabwean dollar. I've got a $100 trillion note in my pocket right here.
Started before.
Yeah, exactly. And now they got smartphones, and what they're doing with these smartphones is they're taking, their local fiat currency and exchange them into US dollar stablecoins or Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, TON coin. Frankly, everything is better than Zimbabwean dollar. And I think the 2 key insights we've had is that, at the nexus of crypto and these so-called exotic or crazy countries, we're finding all the real-world use cases that exist already, right? The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And we're finding not only sort of local or regional, but global winners who had, originally no giant Chinese or US competitor. Of course, that might change now with, the new administration in the US. But, historically, as you know, the superpower still had sort of teething issues with blockchain. And secondly, we're finding those global winners without a, sort of superpower competitor, ahead of Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley isn't looking in the Philippines. And yeah, we did start with Bitcoin, my first love. We invested in Bitcoin mining and, certain Bitcoin lending businesses, some Lightning companies, and then blockchain gaming, and then eventually TON coin. And of course, that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. But like before TON coin, like you said, you were in Bitcoin. Like I remember, if I recall correctly, it's in 2021, the Genesis digital asset, right?
Correct.
And you've always called Bitcoin as the new continent, and in the lineage of Amerigo Vespucci to America, and then to Satorica. And so
Right.
I'm kind of curious, like
No, no,
how does
I'm
TON
happy-
fit into that?
I'm happy to talk about that. I mean, like, I might be one of the very few people in the world
Yep.
who will say Balaji Srinivasan, who I love dearly, right? Maybe the smartest Indian I know, and I know a lot of smart Indians, right?
Yes.
Doesn't take it far enough. He is, of course, very famous for not only bringing a huge amount of people into Bitcoin very early on. He was, teaching the Stanford class back then, and I think in 2012. He was the CTO of Coinbase, built Earn.com, sold to Coinbase, was a part of A16Z, and then wrote the network state. But in my mind, this is the network continent, right? Like almost like America and cyberspace, right? And as you know, of course, there's North and South America and so forth. And it is just a fascinating story in my mind, right? When you think about it, like what the discovery of Bitcoin and blockchain really is, right? It is a lot of things, right? It's almost like the blind man touching the elephant. Like, is it, digital scarcity? Yes, it is. We've never had digital scarcity. Bitcoin also is, of course, absolute scarcity, which we've never had. And, I think we're only going to learn through time what that all means. But it is also this discovery of a new continent in cyberspace. Like, we've been like basically at sea. The cypherpunks have been like, look out the ocean, right? Like traveling, and then suddenly bumped into some landmass, right? This is, I mean, it's not physical, but it's valuable. And it's, something that you can actually own as, we define property, right? And so, I looked at it, and I would argue the discovery of America was a pretty big deal in the arc of history, right? What literally was like, the Wild West and sort of cowboys and Indians, and then became a cotton colony and became, ultimately the global economic superpower and global reserve currency, right? And I think Satoshi maybe inadvertently discovered America and cyberspace. I call it Satorica for the funny reason that most Americans, and I met Trump as well, and he didn't know either, asking the question, why on earth is America called America, right? And look, and half the story is a bit more well known, and it is true, as you said. America was named in honor of Amerigo Vespucci, the famous Italian explorer, right? And that much is true, but Vespucci was a European gentleman. We are recording this in Portugal on the coast of the Atlantic. The European gentleman wasn't so full of himself to name it himself after himself. So the real interesting question in my mind is like, who named America? And it wasn't Vespucci himself. It was this random German cartographer who happened to be from my village. And this is a true story. And, his German name was Martin Waldsee-Müller. And the Latin name is Hyla Cumulus, which is my Telegram handle, right? Yeah. And he wasn't so special, but he was a map maker, the first one who asked the question after making the map in 1507, what should we call this place here? Who found it? Oh, Amerigo found it, so we called America. And so here it's sort of like Satoshi found it. And, if anything, I'm like the map maker, right? And I call it Satorica in honor of Satoshi Nakamoto. And so it might not catch on, but it might. I wrote a piece about it. I'll certainly release a new version of it. But I think it's really important now because we're all friends who've just met, right? We are basically believing in the idea of America, and I'm not so much talking about today's America or about Biden's or Trump's America. I'm talking about the founding fathers. Life, liberty, and viable property, which is John Locke in the UK. And that became life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Now let's go through the list. I mean, clearly, Bitcoin or TON coin, or for that matter, basically any other crypto is digital property, right? Even the IRS, the International Revenue Service in the US, agrees with this by now. It is also liberty, it is freedom, right? And I would argue it gives life and hope to people who neither have liberty nor property. By the people, for the people, from the people, right? And so we're all together on sort of the Mayflower right now. Like, who went to America 400 or 500 years ago? It wasn't the rich people from Europe. It wasn't like, the King of England, right? It was like the people who believed in proof of work, right? To basically, go over there to start a better system, right? From scratch, effectively. And I think this is kind of what we're doing in the world of course, Bitcoin, but really, crypto at large.
Amazing. And so on that basis, then where did you see TON will fit into that arc of history of financial frontiers?
I mean, look, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, but I think the case for Bitcoin maximalism is underestimated. Like, I think, you know, if you don't do this full time, just buy Bitcoin. Like literally, like I think that was not bad advice, and frankly, never sell it, right? Now, of course, you know, there is a very, very strong case to be made for other altcoin ecosystems, right? But, you know, frankly, of the whatever millions of, you know, cryptocurrencies, I think, you know, only a handful, I think, are really viable today and thriving, have real users and real use cases. And of course, you know, the killer app has been, for instance, stablecoins. They're running on layer ones, right? And you know, Ethereum has pioneered a lot of that work, and I take my hat off, you know, Vitalik, and you know, he's of course done an amazing job, and you know, so has, you know, Anatoly and Solana, right? But I would say, you know, Telegram is, of course, you know, a massive force to be reckoned with, right? I mean, Telegram is, you know, 1 billion monthly active users, and it makes it, you know, the #2 messaging app in the Western world after WhatsApp, and clearly the #1 messaging app in the crypto blockchain community globally, right? And in my humble experience, you know, the first billion is the hardest. So, you know, the plan is to go from 1 billion to 2 billion to 3 billion to maybe 4 billion, right? And you know, this is an N of 1 asset run by arguably an N of 1 founder. You know, Pavel Durov, you know, is maybe the greatest of all time. You know, in tennis you can debate, right? Is it, you know, Djokovic, is it Federer, Alcaraz, or Sinner, right? Here the debate is over in my mind. I mean, like, you know, I think he's better than Zuckerberg, you know, and a huge amount of respect for Pony Ma, right? But he might be even better than Pony Ma because, you know, he's the only living human being who's not only built an app that 1 billion people use every month. Yes, there are 5 others, but the only one of those who owns 100% of that app, right? And, you know, Meta today, right, has 400 product managers. Telegram's got, and Zuckerberg is one of them, as far as I understand. Telegram's got 1 product manager, and it's Pavel Durov, right? And you know, his brother also might well be the world's best mathematician, computer scientist, and cryptographer of that generation at least, right? And so, you know, if you think about the team, right? And I'm not even thinking this about like, oh, we're competing with Ethereum, we're competing with Solana, and so forth. Like, I think everything will get bigger. I'll get back to that, right? But I think about, okay, you know, the jockey, the team, right? Our Russians, you know, pun intended, you know, are even smarter, harder working, and more committed than Vitalik and Anatoly, who are also Russians, by the way, right? Ethically, it's like, you know, Pavel and Nikolai and the team around them are the real OGs in my mind, right? So I think we literally have the best founders, builders in that ecosystem. #2, you know, we have a nuclear weapon called Telegram. They don't, right? So, and, you know, if content is king, distribution is the queen, and she's wearing the pants, right? At least in my household. And so if you think about it, like, so, you know, Solana has maybe got 15 million active wallets. And yes, they're Americans and they're whales and they're like, you know, very much winning in what would you call meme coin trading and so forth. And that's exciting. And, you know, Ethereum at least has somewhere between 100 to 200 million wallets, right? And, you know, MetaMask and others, right? And of course, Ethereum's seeing a great resurgence finally again on the back of stablecoins, I would argue. But you know, keep in mind, everyone who uses Solana and Ethereum seriously kind of also uses Telegram. And then Telegram's got another 800 million people or so on top who are not even involved in, you know, Ethereum or Solana or any crypto for that matter, right?
We're turning information flow to financial flow.
Well, yeah. So this is basically, you know, if the Web 1.0 was, you know, basically just, you know, sort of, you know, consuming information, right? To like read, and then, you know, the Web 2.0 was to read and write, to also like, you know, social, like, you know, WeChat and WhatsApp, and so you can not only receive but also send. But here you can exchange value, and this is an order of magnitude bigger in my mind, right? I mean, think about the Chinese economy, right? I mean, I was speaking to an Asian Pacific audience, and you know, the Chinese economy in the 1980s did not exist really. Like,
Yes.
and so it was like basically people on bicycles, like in the same outfit, right? And now the Chinese economy is bigger on a purchasing power basis than the United States economy, right? And it's just getting started, right? And what happened was you introduced property rights, right? Suddenly the real estate market, like you could own businesses, you could open businesses, you could, you know, exchange value, right? And it's a bit similar like this. And you could argue the American dream, dare I say, the Satorican dream is more alive in Asia than in, you know, the West, right? And so I think this is hugely exciting. I think it is global. I think Telegram is at the center of it, really, right? I mean, in Asia specifically, you understand the power of WeChat, right?
Yes.
How did Tencent become
Super app.
Asia's most valuable corporation with $1 trillion peak market cap, right? And of course, the answer is you had not only WeChat in the middle, the messenger, but then you had all the other applications around it, the super app. There are no super apps in the West yet, right? I mean, we know that Elon is trying to create that with X, and we hope he succeeds. But clearly, Telegram is bigger than X, like by over 50% in terms of users. And also, Telegram has the advantage of having already integrated blockchain, which is not the case for X yet, right? And so I think this is the biggest thing in crypto. If you think about it, I mean, other than Bitcoin, of course, right? But if you think about it, like there's 5 apps in the world which are bigger than Telegram in terms of number of users in the sort of social media world. Let's go through that list and ask the question, right? You got WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, who are basically not allowed to do blockchain yet. And Zuckerberg is, of course, talked about going back into stablecoins. Great, let's bring it on. We're not too afraid of that. Quite also busy with AI, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got two Chinese ones. We got Tencent WeChat and ByteDance TikTok, who are so far also not allowed. And so then you got Telegram. So excluding those 5, it is the biggest. It is number 1. It is deployed. It is live. I can send you TON coin or USDT on TON coin or any other asset, for that matter, that lives on the TON blockchain by pressing a button, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're in Taipei, in China, in Hong Kong, in India, or in the United States.
Sure.
I'll pause here.
I'll take that offer. Thank you. Yeah, so you just closed a $558 million PIPE deal with over 110 institutional investors, led by Kingsway, and also anchored by blockchain.com and VI Capital, which is the biggest backer of Elon Musk, and Grantical, which is truly the one of its kind TON DAT. But I'm pretty curious, like, how did you convince those institutional investors to bet on TON, to back TON at this scale? It's amazing.
I think the case for TON is, I think very simple if you think about it, right? Like, it's not like, oh, we have a compelling blockchain with better tech, but no users, but trust us, bro, they will come. No, we've got Telegram, right? And so I think the standalone case for TON is very compelling and simple and, sort of differentiated. And that's, of course, the basis for any digital asset treasury strategy, as we have seen now on the Nasdaq, and this is what we are pursuing, right? Now, I've known Michael Saylor personally for over 4 years, and I, went to his 100K party in this past New Year's in Miami. And I must say, like, credit where credit is due, right? I mean, he pioneered basically this segment with MicroStrategy, now renamed Strategy. And, what's interesting about Strategy, right, is that, the company basically outperformed as a stock NVIDIA in the AI boom, right? And yes, of course, Bitcoin has done very well. The Bitcoin's up something like 11 times in the last 5 years, from sort of like 11K to like 120K or something. But the stock has done 35 times. And so if you break the return down from the spot return of Bitcoin, that's 1/3. But 2/3 came from the capital allocation of Michael Saylor. And I think what Saylor realized, maybe only after the fact, is that, what's so special here is that, that these companies tend to trade at a premium to book, and we can debate why that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, that these are permanent capital vehicles. And, that is different to the ETF, right? There was a huge debate about, like, MicroStrategy, is it all over because now we got IBIT and the Bitcoin ETF, right? And it only just got started, right? And if you sell the ETF sells the coin.
Yes.
And if you sell MicroStrategy stock or VERB stock, the stock can go down, but the coin stays, doesn't move. Permanent capital, right? The holy grail, frankly, I mean, Warren Buffett, frankly, basically has Berkshire Hathaway with permanent capital. And what this means is, so, you can trade at a premium or a discount. You can issue stock or buy back your stock. You can stake, huge advantage over the Bitcoin companies. I'll come back to that. But you can also, be included in an index. And frankly, the ETF can do none of these things. The ETF cannot trade at a premium or discount, cannot issue or buy back, cannot like stake, and cannot be included in an index. So this is like huge difference, and it's compounding over time, right? And so now, originally I thought, you can only do this with Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, since the beginning of this year, you've seen, the success of other digital asset treasury companies in the, biggest sort of altcoin ecosystems, right? Seen a handful in Solana, more coming, a handful in Ethereum, more coming. And in Ethereum in particular, we really like, Tom Lee and the Bitmine case study, right?
Yes.
Which, has been basically outdoing Michael Saylor at being Saylor, right? I mean, these guys,
You're
look
the
at
next.
Yeah, I mean, well, no pressure, but we're working hard on it, right?
Yeah.
But just to give you a sense, right? If you haven't really followed the story, check out the ticker BMNR, Tom Lee, Bitmine, 45 days, 15x, and I can break that down again if you'd like, but like they basically Ethereum's gone up 2x, right? Amazing, right? But this is like again a fraction of the 15x return. And what they've done basically is what we are trying to emulate, just better. And it's super fast. It's super exciting. I think TON has, with all humility, more upside than Ethereum. Ethereum is 50 times bigger than TON coin, right, in terms of market cap. And even Solana is like over 10, 12 times bigger than TON coin in market cap, right? And I think we'll end up with more users than both of them probably combined. And so the biggest delta is in TON coin. And people who are based in Asia, they will understand it, right? Because of WeChat. I mean, like literally, this is sort of like the big advantage. The future is already here; it's just not distributed. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about this today.
Sure. So like what you just had mentioned, compared to Bitcoin or like Ethereum treasury company, what is the unique edge that TON gives to institutional investor, especially with Telegram's 1 billion plus user base?
I would say there's at least three things, right? Of course, Telegram's the first one. Telegram is a private company, and VERB, our company that we just basically transformed into the first, premier, and only TON treasury company, is now the only way for the global equity investor to get access to not only TON, but also effectively, indirectly to Telegram, right? And Telegram does not play in the world of like Ethereum and Solana, right? Telegram is in the world of Meta, 1.8 trillion market cap, Tencent, peak market cap trillion, maybe, ByteDance or X or Snap, right? And, I think Telegram probably would not be a Mac 7 stock today, but maybe it would be Mac 15 or something like that. It's big, right? I mean, like it's seriously big. And so this is now, I think, going to become, for lack of a better word, a proxy stock for Telegram, right? Pavel Durov has decided to keep the company private, and but he has a blockchain, and we have now wrapped that blockchain into a Nasdaq company, and I think TON will do exceedingly well. I mean, again, if this is sort of like the Web 2 analogy, right? I think it's again, which I also tell my friends in Ethereum and Solana ecosystems, like it's not like Facebook ate Google's lunch, or Facebook ate Apple's lunch, and everything got bigger in the end, right? There's like, likely in my mind going to be a handful. Look, I don't know whether that's 5 or 7, right? But a handful of, trillion-dollar protocols in the world. Bitcoin's a 2 trillion, going higher, right? But of course, Bitcoin goes from 2 to 4 trillion, which I think it will. Question of time, it's a 2x, right? Now, Ethereum clearly is a candidate for the trillion-dollar club. But if Ethereum goes to 1 trillion, it's a 2x. Right? Exactly. And maybe Solana gets there first, right? But then it's only a 10x, right? And
for us, it's 120x.
Right, exactly. So TON has got like, even cut that in half. Like, it's clearly the biggest delta, the biggest upside, right? And the most obvious one hiding in plain sight. And so I think the uniqueness of VERB should not be underestimated. And what also I tell, especially to my friends in Asia, but also to our American friends, TON is the only large layer 1 that has not yet been available in the United States at all. Like, and if you look at the sort of performance even of the market, right? Bitcoin's outperformed, of course, because there's a cycle, you can say Bitcoin tends to lead, but also, I mean, there was no institutional adoption of altcoins, right? There was no ETF of any size or at all, and there was no treasury company demand. That's changing. And then all the new money in the world into Bitcoin has into crypto, has basically come from the US. A lot of it, right? And TON is not available in the US. We're not even yet listed. on the largest US spot crypto exchanges. You can look up who they are, but let's just say they're called Coinbase, they're called Robinhood, one of them is called Gemini. We're not even yet listed on the largest Korean spot crypto exchange, which is called Upbit, right? And so there's a huge amount of catalysts coming, right? And then lastly, of course, the founder of Telegram also had his legal troubles in France. And, the good news is, at least, I'm happy to talk about that too, that you're not going to go, waking up one morning and realize that there's an issue, but you went to bed with that certainty last night. Likely there's upside too if this is resolved, which it will be in the end, right? And so I think this is sort of, 2.5x to the all-time high just for the spot. Ethereum is already at the all-time high, right? Mm-hmm. And as you might understand, if TON goes up 2.5 times, VERB will likely go up a lot more than 2.5 times, right? And I can walk you through that math and why that is, but it's not too different to MicroStrategy or BitMine.
It's VERB's multiple of NAV is around 1.5 now, and I'm actually pretty curious. So, what is the playbook here? The playbook of VERB is it to maximize the book value per share?
Yes. So my job at VERB as the executive chairman, and keep in mind Michael Saylor is executive chairman of MicroStrategy, Tom Lee is executive chairman of BitMine, is to work for the common stockholder. Greed is good, right? To grow book value per share relentlessly, right? Now, how do we do that? Well, the simplest way of doing it is basically to issue, let's say, common equity to start with at a premium to book and buy more TON coin at book, right? And if we keep doing that, we grow book value per share, right? Now, of course, we should also talk about the risks, right? The risks are, what the wise man does at the beginning, the fool does at the end, right? And, capitalism is relentless. And, as long as, these kind of trashy companies trade at a premium to book, people will create more of these trashy companies. And at some point, my suspicion would be in the next bear market, we might trade at a discount, right? But if we ever trade at a discount, not a problem, right? Because number one, we are fully unlevered, 100% equity finance. Number two, we have actually got profitability. Because, we can stake, right? And again, I can't overemphasize the advantage of us over even a MicroStrategy. The Bitcoin companies have no native yield, right?
Yes.
And so but they have costs, I guess.
Our yield is around 4 to 5%.
Correct, but it's a scale business, right? It's a winner takes most, in my humble opinion, right? So, Saylor is 30 times bigger than the number two, right? And doesn't mean the number two can't do very well. It can. I mean, Metaplanet has proven it and others, but I don't think Metaplanet can ever catch up with MicroStrategy, right? Mm-hmm. The scale economies in raising capital at a cost of the capital, the speed and the scale of the capital is unmatched, right? And so in Ethereum, there's a race. I mean, there's we think BitMine is pulling ahead, but there's Ether Machine and there's Joe Lubin with Sharplink Gaming, SBET, and there's 5 others, right? There is a race. In TON, there is no second best TON treasury company. We are basically, going even further. It took Saylor 5 years, right? Mm-hmm. To, with all the hodling through the bear market and issuing securities that none of us has ever heard of before, like perpetual preferreds and so forth, to basically get to 3.5% of the Bitcoin supply, right? And, again, credit where credit is due, hats off, right? And of course, it made a difference to the Bitcoin ecosystem, clearly, right? BitMine, right? Big, hairy, audacious goal. We want at some point our North Star is to get to 5%. That would be huge success. We will be more aggressive than Strategy or BitMine. We have already more TON coin than Saylor has Bitcoin as a percentage of total supply.
From day one.
Effectively, right? And so my point is no ecosystem in the global blockchain world will have, in my mind, a bigger impact of the dominant DAT, the dominant digital asset treasury company, as TON coin. Because, look at TON coin's market cap, right? Look at our market cap, look at our cash balance, look at what we can do if we even start buying the spot market. I mean, so I think this is, the misunderstood piece here, that this is sort of gonna be, so obvious in hindsight, and we're giving all of
it was inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. We're giving sort of our listeners all the time, please listen to us. We're trying to explain this to you in plain English, right? This is happening. We are here. We raised the pipe. It has closed. We filed for $1 billion ATM. Like, which part of 1 billion did you not understand? And so
In
like
30 days.
yeah, I mean, so yeah, we're and we're not going to stop at 1 billion. Is that? I mean, Bitmine, they just filed for $20 billion ATM, right? Why wouldn't we do that too? Like, I mean, like this is the depth and the liquidity and the scale of the U.S. equity market should not be underestimated, right? You can add at least 1 zero to everything else, right? So we don't even need to talk about convertibles and like all the other good stuff that we could be doing and we might be doing, but like I think we're just getting started.
Are there any other institutional investors, like let's say from endowment fund or from, I don't know, Harvard or Stanford, approaching you and say, hey, I want to do a like ATM deal?
So look, as Kingsway, we manage capital on behalf of many leading U.S. university endowments. Some of them are Ivy League schools. I won't be able to name specific names given the confidentiality, but they are long-term investors in Kingsway, right? And as you know, the co-investors in TONCoin include, forget even about VERB. I'll talk about VERB in a second. Sequoia Capital, Benchmark, Ribbit, many others, right? And so yes, indirectly or maybe even directly, some of these, large university endowments, even beyond the Kingsway LPs, are already invested in TONCoin, right? This is no longer a fringe view or idea, right? Who's not invested in TONCoin is 99% of all the others, right? So, and of course that's changing now, right? I mean, there's, so much more capital in the world that can buy US equities, that can buy coins. And that's even true for Bitcoin and Ethereum. And this is in my mind why these even Bitcoin or Ethereum treasury companies trade at a premium to book. Sailor, MicroStrategy, or Bitmine trades 1.5 to 2 times book, right? And you can debate why that is. For me, the most obvious answer is that there's so much more capital that can buy the equity, they can buy the coin, right? And now whatever the true number is, whether it's 100 times or something more capital, they can buy equities, they can buy a coin. For TON, you can add 1 0 because we're not even on Coinbase and Robinhood. And so basically, this is arguably a reason for our stock to get even a higher scarcity premium. Not only is TON harder to buy, not only is there not a race between us and other TONCoin companies, we're the only one that has the partnership with Telegram, which is exclusive, right? So I think again, so people, I mean, hopefully will understand, what this is and don't miss the forest for the trees.
But like, how aggressive are you guys? Like to what extent are you guys going to
okay? So let me explain.
buy the TONCoin at the spot market?
Yeah, I mean, so of course I can't talk about exactly our plans there, but let's just say like we are
Rough idea.
rough idea, right? I mean, I think there's at least $100 billion company here, and it might be 2 chapters, right? Chapter 1 is like maybe from 1 billion to 10 billion, right? And then I talk about chapter 2, which is from 10 billion to 100 billion, right? Which is harder, but maybe more exciting. And so I think TONCoin, I think if you believe like I do, right, that TON is in that group of potential candidates for $1 trillion protocols, right? At roughly 5 billion coins, total supply outstanding, it's a $200 coin, right? And let's just say, I mean, I don't know, will we end up owning 10% of it? Probably more, but like, that already would be 100 billion, right? Like, but, without even a multiple on the NAV, right? And now, and maybe I'm conservative, but the other thing I would say is that, there is not only the balance sheet with a multiple, but also there is the P&L or cash flow statement with a multiple, right? Which I alluded to earlier. So let's talk about the staking, right? So basically, I do worry about the number 75 Bitcoin treasury company not resisting the temptation to reach for yield, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, Bitcoin, the yield is the friends we make along the way, right? and we don't have that problem, right? And with all humility, I've built a multi-billion-dollar asset management business from zero, right? And it strikingly reminds me of the early days of Kingsway here, right? Now there is, again, scale economies in charging a small percentage of a big number, right? Now imagine you have $10 billion AUM, and compare that to $100 million AUM. You don't have 100 times more cost. but you have 100 times more assets, right?
Yeah.
So even if you go from 10 billion to 5, God forbid, to 2.5, right? 75% down, you're probably still profitable, right? Because you can run it at an 80% margin or something like here, right? And the way you do that, you stake, right? Now, staking yields somewhere between 4 to 5%. Okay. But, even on our current balance sheet, that's, not too far from $30 million of revenue, right? Day one, right? Profitable. I mean, like, you can debate what the costs are, but, we're going to keep that pretty tight. Now, secondly, why don't we end up owning our own staking infrastructure, right? As you know, when you stake, when you're small, you maybe pay 20% of the gross staking fee to get the net staking fee, right? To go from 5 to 4%, right? If you're big, maybe 10%. But, why don't we end up doing this ourselves, right? Because the numbers are big enough. Even better idea, why don't we do delegated staking? Which means that, Kingsway has, of course, not only the biggest stake in VERB, but we also have a lot of coins over here. And so does all the other, VERB investors and the other big TON coin investors. So why don't we, they can all keep it in their own custody and then, use VERB as a delegating staking business where VERB gets the gross to net because they have to pay a service provider anyway, right? Boom, suddenly double that. Not only balance sheet with a multiple, cash flow statement and with a multiple from staking. And then the last thing I'll say, and of course I can't promise this, I can not tell you that it will happen or that if it happens, it will happen for VERB.
Looks like there's some alpha here.
But it's been discussed. Why don't we do the Telegram TON's stablecoin? And this is Manny math, right? On a, sunset in Portugal. But just hear me out, right? Imagine $1,000, right? Not an insurmountable amount of money to have in your bank account, right?
Yes.
I'm talking now about the average Telegram user, right? There's wealthy people on Telegram, there's poor people on Telegram, right? But on average, $1,000 in your bank account, right? I mean, I lost that much money in the crypto market this morning, I guess. If 1 billion people have $1,000 in the Telegram TON stablecoin, that's $1 trillion AUM business. And at a 3% net interest margin, NIM, that's $30 billion of cash flow a year. Now, even if you were to pay half that to Telegram, which you probably would, like Circle, Coinbase, $15 billion of cash flow. So, and you add that up with if you're 100 billion of TON coin, 4% staking. I mean, maybe there's a $300 billion company here. I don't know. And you saw Pavel, no pressure. But he thinks we should think big and think maybe much bigger than anyone else other than Bitcoin.
Fantastic. Then, so you've actually called TON as the national currency of Telegram. And how does TON underpin Telegram's monetization model across mini apps, wallets, ads, and bots?
Yeah. I think it's very misunderstood. There's often been calling into question how much Pavel or Telegram is actually behind TON coin, how committed they are, and is it really important to them? Let me just explain that, as someone who, of course, has a direct line to Pavel and, has met him something like 3 times so far this year, it is plan A is TON coin, right? Plan B is also TON coin, and plan C is TON coin. So plan D is refinancing the Telegram debt, and plan E or F is to take company public. But this is Elon Musk entrepreneurship, and what I mean by that is that as you know, Elon doesn't want to go to Mars to make more money. No, of course, SpaceX needs to be 100 billion, 300 billion, ultimately $1 trillion company to make everyone really wealthy who invests and risks the capital into the mission or who works there, right? But the bigger goal, arguably much more noble goal, is to keep the candle of consciousness alive, make human consciousness multiplanetary, right? And the same with Tesla and the Boring Company and Neuralink and X and XAI, right? Now Pavel is the same with Telegram. He doesn't want to build Telegram to make more money. No, he had hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cash in Bitcoin, whatever, in 2013, right, or 14, right? So, but it's about the mission. What is the mission? The mission is freedom of speech. Again, Satorica, First Amendment, right?
Putting freedom into orbit.
So on freedom into orbit, right? I think, again, just to explain what I mean by that. So, freedom of speech, freedom to transact, privacy and banking the unbanked, right? But if you do it an attempt to put it into orbit and you fail, it comes crashing down. Now, if you actually, succeed in putting it into orbit, it stays there for 1,000 years, forever, right?
Yes.
And that is a huge difference. And now the reality is, freedom is not free. The mission has to be financed. But, what does Pavel do? Unlike Zuckerberg, right? He doesn't want to violate your privacy, take all your private data, mine it with the AI, showing you invasive ads and sell your data to anyone who wants to buy it, including all the governments, right? No, he wants to monetize the honest way, which is to say he does subscription, Telegram Premium, sort of like 16 million or so Telegram users pay, $10 a month in my case, for more features and, so forth and better experience. He's, of course, done a non-invasive ads platform, put on TON rails, respecting user privacy. He's done a bond. But TON is the most important puzzle piece of the entire global monetization puzzle for Telegram, right? What does TON coin do, right? And of course there is a financial alignment here. Telegram owns a lot of TON coin. Telegram has publicly said they're sort of keen to be in the 10 to 15% range of the total supply. Much more, of course, than VERB has or Kingsway has or investors have, but but they also don't want to have too much, right? Because they want to have respect for the decentralization of the network, right? And, another evidence of that, you can own Mr. Z at Telegram, right?
Yes.
And if you do, Pavel Durov cannot take it away from you.
But it is somehow taken. Sadly.
Yeah, but you can buy it. You can buy it. You can bid for it.
Yeah, bid for it.
That's the free world. It's a free country, right? But, if, I don't know, I own Manny, right? Or, you can try to buy Elon and it might be expensive, but, if you have it, the platform cannot take it away from you. It's decentralized, right? And so the TON blockchain, if this is sort of Satorica, American cyberspace, freedom of speech, First Amendment, which is what Telegram does, this is the property rights layer. Imagine owning a piece of Manhattan, of Virginia, of California. Like, even if it's small, like, it was a pretty good investment, right? You can do the math, like, Trump and Putin just met in Alaska. Alaska, I think, was sold by the Russians to the US for like, whatever, $17 million or something. Louisiana purchased from France. And Manhattan was bought from the Indians for again, a bunch of fiat money, effectively, right? And so I think, owning a piece of this is a good idea. And I think, what happens there is that you can own your username, you can own your phone number, you can own, gifts or any other NFTs. You can own, of course, dollars on the TON blockchain. You can own, Bitcoin on the TON blockchain. And then, it's not just for the user, it's also for the developers, right? And for all the other, stakeholders and contributors here. So basically, if you're a developer, you can get paid out in TON coin, right? And if you're an advertiser, you can get paid out in TON coin. You're a channel owner, you're content creator, right? And so it's almost like what the dollar is to the United States and sort of the America. I think Satorica will be bigger than America, right? And of course, Satorica is also bigger than Telegram and TON. Satorica includes Bitcoin and the whole thing, right? But Telegram is clearly, the so if this is North America and South America, and there's Mexico and Canada, and there's Guatemala, this is in my mind the US of A. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
So and the most important of all the American countries on that continent is Telegram, and it's of course blockchain TON.
Digital continent.
Yeah, and Bitcoin for me is like the denominator. It's like of course gold, right? So we will measure the price of TON coin in Bitcoin terms, right? But it's not like sort of competing in a sense at all. For market share with TON in my mind.
But speaking of Bitcoin, and
yes,
I think the most exciting thing in our ecosystem is tgBTC. When will that be launched, actually?
Yeah, I agree. So tgBTC, for those who don't know, is basically a way of owning Bitcoin on the TON blockchain. And as you know, as much as we all love Bitcoin, and it literally I've First love, it changed my life. I can make a whole podcast about Bitcoin and why it's so exciting, right? And maybe I should. But the thing is, as you know, Bitcoin is quite slow and quite expensive as a blockchain, and it's also as a result, I would say, elitist. the problem, I've gotten into crypto because of my experience in Nigeria, in Bangladesh, right? There's literally like people who have no bank account and they have $2 a day. And try to put $2 a day into, Bitcoin layer one. Like, it doesn't work. And if you just look at Bitcoin, the UTXO said it doesn't scale to 1 billion people, 3 billion, right? It doesn't scale, right? And so now, of course, I'm a huge believer and, hopeful, I would say, in Lightning. I might be one of the biggest investors in Lightning in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, no one uses it yet. I still have hopes and,
Soon.
Yeah, soon. But I think tgBTC is interesting because that allows you to own Bitcoin, and I would argue like a fraction of a Bitcoin, right, on the TON blockchain. So as long as you believe into the TON consensus, which I do, then you can, especially, if you're a poor person in Africa, you can put $2 a day into Bitcoin or $10 and own it in your TON wallet inside Telegram in the app, right? And then you can use it also in DeFi. Like, you can be your own Michael Saylor, right? Go, you are like, $1,000 in Bitcoin.
Oh, Michael
Maybe,
Saylor.
I mean, I'm not advising, again, like the way smart young men like you and I go bust is the 3 L's, ladies, liquor, and leverage.
Charlie Munger.
Correct. So maybe, even if ladies and liquor were fine, like no leverage, right? But like, that being said, like if you have $1,000 in Bitcoin, borrowing 10%, $100 against it, in TON DeFi, if you own a tgBTC, is at least an option for people to consider, right? And maybe you can even do it and you can borrow it in not dollars, but in whatever, Nigerian naira. And then I would kind of agree that this is probably a good idea. Shorting the Nigerian naira is never a bad idea against the dollar, let alone Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, perhaps.
I'll pause here.
Yeah. But like, there's also another thing that I want to touch on, like the stablecoin, right?
Yeah.
Like last April, we saw Tether, the USDT, being launched on TON blockchain, and it has grown like at the fastest speed. But like in maybe the near future, will we be expecting some other stablecoin being launched?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the US dollar stablecoin is arguably the killer app for, crypto x Bitcoin, for, all the altcoin ecosystems, for DeFi. It's the most successful application, right? Stablecoins have gone from basically zero to what is it now? 250 billion or so, I guess. Like Tether is 160, and it's probably about 2/3 of the whole market.
And with the Genius Act.
With the Genius Act, I mean, it's now fully in line with US policy. The Winston Churchill was right. He said America will always do the right thing, but only after all other options have been exhausted, right? I mean, it took longer than it should have taken. And yeah, of course, Tether is the biggest stablecoin. We have that. I think we've executed probably the fastest launch of Tether on any other chain anywhere, right? I think we went from 0 to like 1 billion in like 6-7 months. And, we launched Athena, right? Which is a bit like leftover treasure for our, yeah, exactly. And, people outside China don't realize how big the digital money market funds have become in either Baba or Tencent, right? But there's 100 billion each, right? Like within no time, bigger than at the time the JP Morgan money market fund, right? Because people can just like put it over there, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got high hopes for Athena and USDE. We launched FDUSD. Let's see, right? I mean, we're also as Kingsway very big shareholders in Animoca, and there are like lots of stuff going on in FDUSD. Given our US market entry, you can guess which coin we're gonna launch next, and it starts with a U and ends with a C, right? And I think that's sort of a question of time, and it won't be long, and we won't stop there, right? I think. Well, I mean, my view is there's going to be a proliferation of stablecoins. I mean, it's maybe the best business in crypto is just to do your stablecoin, right? I mean, Tether makes more money than Goldman Sachs, right? With like arguably 30 people. Now, of course, there's probably 200, 300 compliance people by now and like a lot of software, but like still, it's one of the best businesses ever conceived, right? And of course, Circle trades at a pretty good multiple in the U.S. public markets, right? I talked about what we might end up deciding to do. Why not do our own stablecoin as well? Especially in the public company where you not only get the profits but also the multiple, right? So I would just say stay tuned on the stablecoin stuff. The genie is out of the bottle. It's not going back in, and I've never seen a market, right? I mean, of course, you can debate whether Bitcoin is going to take up all the dollars later, but let's say in the fiat interregnum where we are, right? The TAM, the total addressable market of the stablecoin market, is insane, right? I mean, it's in the tens of trillions, right? the network effect is insane. Like, people, I guess, the USDT, like there's entire countries now in my ecosystem, like, Turkey and Argentina kind of run on USDT-ish, right? I mean, there's like, literally you can pay at the corner shop, right?
It's flourished.
It's insane. And then, not only is it like faster, cheaper, 24/7, right? But you can also take self-custody. And it's so obvious to me that stablecoins are better than, the fiat system. I mean, hell, it will take you like, less time, right? Like to basically take cash out of the ATM here and fly back to Asia, then wire the money.
We went to London and then we didn't change any, like we didn't exchange any like pound. It's all in
exactly.
the form.
So I think, and then and also, getting a bit more, down the rabbit hole here, right? Like what you're seeing right now is that, Tether, of course, is launching its own layer 1, right? Plasma, and then you see Stripe.
Just JP Morgan and Coinbase.
Yeah, but Stripe just announced. Base has, of course, existed now for a while, and there's clearly, a big success story there, I would guess. And Stripe, right? Biggest sort of private unicorn fintech launching its own layer 1 for payments, right? And I think the challenge with like Base and Plasma and what Stripe is doing is they need to do it credibly decentralized, right? Which is sort of a dilemma, right? Because they're doing it to control the user experience and to make it sort of purpose-built for their use case, which is payments, right? In Stripe's case, or stablecoins in Tether's case. But it only works if it's actually decentralized. And like you can't have it both ways, right? You can't control the user experience and do it all of it and also have decentralized. TON is sitting there. Like we have Telegram distribution, it's already there, right? And you can argue about the degree of decentralization, but it's less than Bitcoin, but more than Base, right? And Coinbase has a lot of users, but like a fraction of a fraction, like compared to what Telegram has. And so maybe TON is also going to be the stablecoin chain in the end. That's sort of going to win in that space, right? And it's not B2B, I think, but it's I think B2C.
That is competitive enough that can compete with maybe Tron or Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tron is I think twice the market cap of TON, maybe even 3 times. I've stopped looking, but what's interesting about Tron is that they make something like $500 to $600 million worth of fees per year just from USDT, which is kind of all they do. And I think no one uses USDT on Tron because they believe it's the most robust or safe tech ever, or they love Justin Sun, right? No, it used to be fast and cheap. Now it's just fast, no longer cheap. And what Jeff Bezos figured out is like your margin, Justin. It's my opportunity, right? So why don't we try to I think the whole Tether pie will grow, and I think USDT on Tron will probably also grow despite us taking market share or other people do, because there's such a tailwind, right? But like there's a huge opportunity here for Tether or other US dollar stablecoins on TON vis-a-vis on Tron or other chains, right? I mean, like again, no one has the distribution that we do.
Mass adoption, 500 million users by 2028.
I think that's a low ball. I mean, I think we're going to go higher, right? I mean, like,
you got sky is the limit.
No, but I think, for me, this is sort of a bit more binary, right? Like, either it's the whole, either Bitcoin's going to zero and this is all over, or we're going to the moon and Bitcoin's going to be like, millions of dollars, and stablecoins will be tens of trillions, and these are $5 trillion protocols, and it's sort of Mark Twain said, gradually then suddenly, right? So I think this is sort of sneaking up on us, right? And it's not the first time. Remember how, I mean, in your case WeChat, in my case WhatsApp, it kind of snuck up on us, right? Like we didn't have it, now everyone has it. Like that's sort of normal, right? And my mother is on WhatsApp now, like and she doesn't know which protocol is running in the background. Like
you didn't teach you didn't teach her on like how to use Telegram.
Yeah. So, but it's my point, right? Like, look, I love crypto, right? But do I want to have 100 seed phrases flying around and have a MetaMask wallet and pay gas fees and bridge to this joint? No, look, I want to press buttons and expect it to work. Yes. The way I use the internet. My mother, who uses the internet, doesn't know nor care which protocol is running in the background. Is it TCP/IP? Is it Linux? Is it HTTP? Is it no? You hop into your wallet, Telegram, right? Link to your wallet, 1 billion users, right? Hop into a game, link to your wallet, right? And so basically, it's sort of, we're going to be very Web 2 in the front end, I think. And of course, some people are much more sophisticated, will always take self-custody and do that, but most people don't, and it's fine. It's a free country, right? And no app and no chain is as well positioned for this future as Telegram and TON.
Perfect. Amazing.
And no stock, by the way, is going to have a basically exposure to this other than VERB, right? We haven't talked enough about VERB, but anyway.
But VERB has actually proven to be, actually working pretty well in the U.S. capital markets.
Well, just like 2 weeks, right? But yeah,
just 2 weeks.
It's off to a good start.
Mm-hmm. But then, are you expecting there to be like other DAT?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we welcome this. We think, again, while there is maybe right now no other one, we would love for you guys to do one in Asia, or, maybe have. Look, I don't think you need like 12, but I think you need more than one, like maybe 5. I don't know what the right number is, right? But the two basically benefits of the digital asset treasury company listed on a stock exchange is that the capital flywheel, right? Raising capital, buy more coin. Raising capital, buy more coin, right? Mm-hmm. And if other people do that, same team, right? Great. But the second one, which is maybe just as important, and frankly, one of the biggest criticisms I will have personally on the TON ecosystem is we haven't done a good enough job in telling the story well enough. And we can debate why that is. It doesn't matter. We haven't done it. And now we're fixing this, right? And so also VERB will build one of the biggest megaphones in terms of like explaining the story. There's a 30-second version of it, right? Mm-hmm. There's a 3-minute version of it. And there's like a 1-hour version of it, which we're doing right now, right? And we have to do that, of course, in different geographies, right? So VERB is going to be very focused on the US. Now, of course, we welcome investors from around the world. And, if you can buy US equities, if you're sitting in Asia, Korea, we are quite interested in, please do that. But I don't speak Korean. I don't speak Chinese. I don't speak, so if we can help you get your own version of this off the ground, especially with an Asia-Pac focus, right? And maybe I would, recommend the WeChat narrative because it's so blatantly obvious. Super, yeah. I mean, let's talk after this is over, right? Yeah. And we'll help you out, right? In more ways than one.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of that, so we can be expecting in the next, maybe, I don't know, next 6 months and maybe next 12 months, you will basically be like Tom Lee, right? Attending all kinds of shows.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I was, and I still kind of am, a quite private person. I've reluctantly agreed to sacrifice my well-earned privacy by becoming more public. And already that started like sort of 8-9 months ago with becoming president of the TON Foundation, which was really like sort of a George Washington moment. Like I did not want to become president of the TON Foundation, like to be clear. But, George Washington also did not want to become president of the United States, right? And it was sort of a situation of like, Tina, there is no alternative, right? So someone had to do it. And ultimately, I believe the best person for the job has to do it, even if it doesn't suit that person very well. And it's also about doing the right thing. And not always, but often I found doing the right thing is to put your own interest below the greater good. I mean, China is excellent at that. The whole country operates this way, right? So it's not about me, like, I'm literally not interested in fame or anything like this. Frankly, I think it's a liability. But if this is what it takes to go on CNBC, to go on Squawk Box, to have podcasts, to fly to Korea, to, explain this, and, it's, of course, I think a great story to tell, right? And it's very, very important. It's important to me. It's important to Telegram, and it's important to the free world at large, right? I'll do it. And yes, so here I am, and we can do this again every, 3 months or whatever the cadence is. Yeah.
Update.
And I'm coming to Asia in October. I'll probably try to be in Korea, maybe for Korean Blockchain Week, and be in Token in Singapore. And I'll try to come as often as I can, basically. Yeah.
Sure. So. We will go catch you again.
Great.
Okay, so the one last question. Since we are on ton of alpha, and is there like any sorts of news, any sorts of alpha that no one is talking about but should be?
Yeah, I think people still haven't understood fully. Like, it didn't sink in what it means, right? That we have now a $1 billion Nasdaq listed company that is run by like real people, right? Like, we're like real people, right? Like, this is not like, Tom, Dick, and Harry waking up one morning, like, no. With a huge amount of capital and more to come, with a $1 billion ATM, more to come, right? To have its sole purpose to buy TON coin, right? And I think that's bigger than ultimately what Coinbase listing and Robinhood listing. I mean, like those will all matter, but like the point is like, you know, there's so much more money in the equity market than in the coin market, and so this is sort of this, you know, short window where you can say, okay, I'm privileged to listen to this, right, and to know Mr. Z and his friends.
Honor.
Yeah, honor's all mine, right? And we, you know, frankly, have been very focused on actually getting the message out first, right? Because getting the message out first, you know, it reaches the right people first, and they can then make their own mind up. And, you know, it's a bit like with Bitcoin, right? Planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree was like 10 years ago. The next best time is today, right? The path to greatness is never straight. Like, also want to not, you know, sugarcoat this. I mean, you guys have been in Bitcoin longer than I have in crypto, right? So there will be ups and downs, but hopefully a lot more ups and downs. And I think the key is to have the, you know, vision to see it, then the courage to do it, and the patience to stick with it. And sometimes the patience is actually the hardest, right? But I think this will have a huge impact, right? The US market entry is real. It's happening. This is part of it, but like this is not the only part of it. I think the Korea market entry is part of it, right? It's also happening. And then I think, you know, yeah, the stablecoin stuff is real. You know, the Pavel situation will get resolved. I think this in a cycle overall, I mean, where's this going, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, like we're on one hand, of course, pretty like far in from a sort of time perspective since halving, but Bitcoin's only at 120K. I mean, had you like asked me, you know, oh my God, where will we be if Trump gets elected and we have like 1,000 Bitcoin treasury companies, like 250, like 400, I don't know, like so we're just getting started there, and so I think the boom and bust cycle is not over clearly, but I think we're still pretty early in this. You know, it's still kind of very early in my mind, and in TON it's super early.
Still early.
Yeah, and VERB we're 2 weeks old, by the way. 2 weeks in terms of this new life, right? And look at Bitmain chart, 2 weeks in, right? I mean, like, so
It's kind of like this.
yeah. I mean, this is sort of like, you know, people are just starting to hear about it, like, and the Americans, like, no offense, right? But like, you know, you talk to the American retail investor, like, TON coin, what is it? Do you eat it? Like, you know, so like, no, I never heard of it. Like, and I've heard of Telegram. That's helpful. And this is how we try and explain it. It's like, okay, you might have heard of TON coin, but you have heard of Telegram, and you look at the app, and I can send you. But no, it's like Venmo. Yeah, I get it. But like, you know, 95% of the global population is outside the US, right? And of course, the US though is half of the world's equity capital, and so imagine that being plugged in, and then also, you know, it's not like we don't have Pavel's endorsement. We kind of do. He posted about it, and he might do it again. So let's see.
Let's see.
Yeah, a lot of alpha hopefully there. But I can tell you, like, we're excited about the future.
All right, awesome. So that's a wrap up for today's show. And then huge thank you to Manny.
谢谢.
Huge thank you to Manny. And then so this is the episode 3 of Ton of Alpha. And this is your host, Mr. Z. And see you next time. See you in the next episode. We're still early. And then please, if you're interested in us, go follow TON Strat and Manuel Stotz on X. And also Ton of Alpha. Thank you. Thank you, Manny.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thanks
Z.
so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.